My accountant called and said, "There's a wire transfer. $18,000 went out yesterday to an account I don't recognize." I said, "That's impossible. I was with my kids all weekend." Her voice dropped. "I know. That's why I'm calling then." I realized why my new wife had disappeared for 10 minutes during dinner. My accountant called at 8:12 on a gray Monday morning and said, "There's a wire transfer. $18,000 went out yesterday to an account I don't recognize." I was standing in my kitchen in socks, pouring cereal for my son while my daughter fought with the toaster. For one stupid second, I thought she had the wrong client. "That's impossible," I said. "I was with my kids all weekend." Her voice dropped. "I know. That's why I'm calling." The spoon slipped from my hand and hit the counter. My son, Oliver, looked up from his bowl. "Dad?" "Nothing, buddy," I said automatically. "Eat." But my pulse had already changed. Slow, heavy, wrong. "The transfer was made through your online banking portal," Denise said. "Correct password. Correct secondary verification. It went out Sunday at 7:46 p.m. I froze what I could, but the money is already gone from your reserve account. I need to know if anyone else had access." Anyone else? I turned toward the dining room, and the memory hit me so fast it made my stomach drop. Sunday dinner. Roast chicken. Candles my wife insisted made ordinary meals feel intentional. Lily rolling her eyes at them. Oliver asking for dessert too early. And Vanessa, my new wife of 9 months, excusing herself right after coffee. She had disappeared for 10 minutes. I noticed because Vanessa never moved without a reason. She never left her phone behind, never stepped away from a room unless she had an excuse ready. "I need to take a quick call from the gallery," she'd said. I hadn't questioned it. Why would I? "I'm Archibald Mercer, 39, commercial pilot, father of 2, divorced once, remarried once. A man who lives by checklists, systems, backup plans, fuel margins, and emergency procedures. I trust structure. I trust preparation. I trust the quiet logic of things that work. That mindset keeps you alive in the air. On the ground, it can make you slow to recognize betrayal." "Archibald?" Denise said. I cleared my throat. My wife may have had access. May. She knows where I keep things. She may have seen passwords. "Send me the receiving account." "I'm sending it now," Denise said. "You need to come in, sign fraud documents, lock everything down, and file a police report. And don't confront anyone until your devices and accounts are secured." I stared at the empty dining room. I understand. After I hung up, I stood there with the phone in my hand, not moving. Lily was watching me from the table. 14 years old, too observant for her own good, with that calm face that always made me feel she knew more than she said. "What happened?" she asked. "Bank issue." "A real one?" I looked at my children. Oliver, 8, milk on his chin. Lily, sharp-eyed and already halfway to the truth. And a cold realization settled into me. This wasn't the first warning sign. It was just the first one I could no longer dismiss. "Lily," I said, "get your brother ready for school. I need to make some calls." She didn't move. Did Vanessa do something? There it was. Not, "Are we okay?" Not, "Are you okay?" Did Vanessa do something? Children hear structural cracks before adults admit the house is shifting. "I don't know yet," I said. And the worst part was, that answer fit far more than the missing money. I met Vanessa a year and a half after my divorce. My first marriage had ended quietly. No affair, no screaming matches. Claire and I had simply worn each other down through years of schedules, fatigue, and quiet resentment. We became decent co-parents and failed spouses. I'd buried myself in flying because the cockpit was the one place my mind still made sense. A plane doesn't care about your ego. A checklist doesn't care whether you feel appreciated. It wants one thing from you: competence. People are harder than machines because people can smile while they lie. I met Vanessa at a charity event my sister dragged me to. She stood near a silent auction display in a black dress, listening to a board member with that polished half smile that made a man feel more interesting than he was. When I introduced myself, she tilted her head and said, "Archibald. That's a magnificent name. You sound like a man who should own a private island or sign documents with a fountain pen." I laughed. I fly airplanes. Her eyes lit up. Even better, pilots know how to leave. At the time, it sounded clever. Later, I would understand Vanessa often told the truth early. She just wrapped it in elegance. She asked about my children before she asked about my income. She remembered details. Lily loved astronomy. Oliver hated peas. Claire and I shared custody cleanly. Vanessa sent thoughtful messages during layovers. Sunsets, airport coffee jokes, snippets from books she claimed reminded her of me. She was never loud, never clingy, never dramatic. That was part of what made her dangerous. Oliver liked her quickly because she spoke to him seriously. Lily distrusted her almost immediately. Vanessa handled that carefully. She didn't force affection. She gave Lily space, asked her opinions, treated her as if she mattered. Lily never warmed completely, but she stopped resisting. Even Claire, after meeting Vanessa twice, said, "She's very composed." Claire meant it as caution. I heard it as approval. Vanessa moved in 9 months after we met. We married 6 months later at a small lakeside ceremony. My parents came, my sister cried. Oliver danced until he fell asleep in a chair. Lily wore blue and looked unconvinced in every photograph. Vanessa looked radiant, calm, certain. I mistook certainty for safety. By noon that Monday, I had done everything Denise told me. I changed passwords, froze every account, reported the transfer as fraud, filed a police report, sat across from a tired officer who asked questions in the tone of a man who had seen too many family theft cases to find mine unusual. "What makes you think your wife may be involved?" he asked. "Opportunity," I said. "Access. Any proof?" "Not yet." That phrase followed me all day. Not yet. Because once suspicion enters a marriage, memory becomes unstable. Harmless questions become reconnaissance. Little irritations become contempt. Smiles become masks. When I pulled into my driveway, Vanessa's car was there. I sat behind the wheel for almost a minute staring at the front of the house. White siding, blue shutters, basketball hoop, Lily's bike on the lawn, Oliver's muddy cleats near the porch. A stable house. A normal house. Inside it, my wife had likely stolen $18,000. I went in through the garage. Vanessa was in the kitchen arranging white tulips in a glass vase. She turned and smiled. "There you are." I texted. I hadn't looked. Her face was open, lovely, completely untroubled. Cream blouse, gold earrings, hair pinned up in a way meant to look effortless. And suddenly, I remembered a conversation from 3 weeks earlier. We'd been drinking wine after the kids went to bed when she asked why I kept so much liquid cash in my reserve account. "You always keep that much just sitting there?" she'd asked. "Usually. For what? Repairs, tuition, emergencies, house issues, legal problems if life gets messy." She smiled. "You really do build backup systems for everything." Now I wondered if she had been measuring the easiest place to cut. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive." Her eyes narrowed by 1 degree. Vanessa was excellent at reading shifts in tone. "What happened?" $18,000 left my reserve account yesterday. The vase stilled in her hands. Then she resumed adjusting the flowers. "That sounds serious." "It is." And the transfer was made through my banking portal. She looked at me directly. "Are you asking me something?" Reality forked right there. One version of the afternoon continued if I accepted the calm lie she was offering. The other began if I refused it. "I'm asking where the money went." Her expression cooled. "That's an ugly accusation, Archibald." "Then answer clearly. Did you transfer $18,000 out of my account?" She gave a small laugh. "Your account. No confusion, no outrage, no disbelief. Just phrasing." I stared at her. "You disappeared for 10 minutes during dinner last night. You knew my laptop password. You knew where I keep the authentication key. You asked about that account 3 weeks ago." Her jaw tightened. "Because you leave your life spread open on every surface of this house. So you did it." She held my gaze. "What if I did?" The room went silent. "You stole from me." "I moved money," she said, "to an account I don't recognize. A temporary account. For what?" She crossed her arms. "For something that concerns me." That isn't an answer. No, it's a boundary. I nearly laughed. You moved $18,000 without my permission. That isn't a boundary. It's fraud. Her eyes flashed. Oh, don't be so provincial. You're acting as if I robbed a stranger. It was money sitting idle while I've been carrying more than you ever notice. Carrying what? This marriage. My mind became very clear. This marriage, I repeated. Yes, the emotional labor, the social labor, the endless adaptation, your ex-wife still orbiting every major decision, your daughter evaluating me, your son needing constant reassurance, your schedule determining the emotional climate of the house. You come and go and call it responsibility. I work. You vanish, I provide, you manage. There it was. The private translation Vanessa had been performing all along. Reliability became absence, planning became control. Provision became arrogance. She had rewritten my strengths into flaws while benefiting from every one of them. What did you need the money for? I asked. She looked away, and before she answered, I knew. Someone else. There's a man, I said. She didn't deny it. How long? No answer. How long? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She let out a sharp breath. You were never enough for me in the way that mattered. The sentence was designed to wound. Who is he? A man who sees me. That almost would have been funny if it hadn't involved my money. A man who needed $18,000 to see you. Her face flushed. Good. You don't understand the opportunity. Try me. It was an investment. Whose? She hesitated. That was answer enough. You stole my emergency fund to impress your lover. You make everything sound vulgar. I'm stripping it down to what it is. Her hands had started to shake, though her voice stayed controlled. You think because you keep accounts balanced and school forms signed and flights scheduled that you're some ideal husband. You don't love, you administrate. I stepped closer. And you don't sacrifice, you position. That landed. Because that was the truth at the center of Vanessa. Nothing she gave was free. Every kindness expected return. Every tenderness bought leverage. Every act of patience was an investment in future control. I want the money back by tonight, I said. She laughed once. That may not be possible. Then tell me where it is. No, I nodded. Then pack a bag. Now she looked genuinely surprised. You're throwing me out. I'm removing unauthorized access from my house. Your house, she repeated. Yes, since we're being exact. Her eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. Maybe. But not as much as I'd regret letting you stay. She yanked open a drawer, slammed it shut, then turned back toward me. I gave things up for this marriage. Name one. Her mouth opened, then closed, because there was no answer. I took out my phone and called my sister Margaret. She answered on the second ring. Archie, I need you here. Something in my voice told her enough. I'm coming. Vanessa stared at me. You need backup? No, I need witnesses. Margaret arrived in 24 minutes, wearing hospital scrubs under a coat, red hair, half falling out of a knot, face already set in that trauma nurse expression that says somebody in this room is about to lose an illusion. She looked at me, then Vanessa. What happened? Vanessa transferred $18,000 from my reserve account without my permission. Margaret turned to Vanessa. Did you? Vanessa smiled, that polished little smile. Archibald is overreacting to a financial decision he doesn't understand. Margaret snorted. That sounded rehearsed. Vanessa stiffened. Margaret had distrusted her from the beginning. At my wedding, she hugged me and whispered, "Keep your paperwork immaculate." I've asked her to leave, I said. Margaret nodded once. Vanessa looked between us. You're humiliating me. No, Margaret said. You handled that yourself. Vanessa turned to me. So your family gets to define me? No, you did. For the first time, her composure cracked. You're so self-righteous. I didn't react. She went upstairs. Margaret waited until she was out of earshot. There's more. There's a man. Of course there is. Was it obvious to Lily? That hit harder than the theft. I sat down slowly at the kitchen island. Kids always know first, Margaret said. They just don't have the authority to name what they're seeing. 10 minutes later, Vanessa came down with 2 expensive suitcases and a garment bag. She had changed clothes before leaving, which felt perfectly in character. Even in disgrace, she preferred costume. She set the luggage by the door. You're making this uglier than it needs to be. No, I'm making it visible. Margaret opened the door. Vanessa lifted one of the bags, then paused. You'll hear stories, she said. People never like simple versions. They'll want texture. Then tell them texture. She tilted her head. You were never enough for me. That time I did smile. Maybe not. But my money would have been, for the first time all day, her face lost every trace of polish. She looked angry, exposed, foolish. Then she walked out. Margaret locked the door behind her. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful, but it was breathable. The children came home from school an hour later. I had rehearsed a careful explanation in my head. Measured, responsible, non-destructive. Lily destroyed it in 5 seconds. She's gone, isn't she? Oliver looked from her to me. Who? I crouched so I was level with both of them. Yes, Vanessa is gone. Did she do something bad? Lily asked. Yes. Oliver's face crumpled instantly. Did she leave because of me? No training on Earth prepares a father for that question. I pulled him close. No, never because of you. Then why? Because she broke trust. Lily crossed her arms. I knew it. Margaret shot her a look, but I shook my head. No. Let her talk. Lily looked at me steadily. She acted different when you weren't around. The room seemed to narrow. What do you mean? She was nice when she needed something, Lily said. But if Oliver got loud, she'd get this smile. Lily demonstrated it. A tight, dead-eyed version of Vanessa's expression. So accurate, it made my stomach turn. And once she told me I'd be prettier if I smiled more in pictures. Margaret muttered something vicious under her breath. I felt sick, not only because of Vanessa, because my daughter had been carrying that alone. Why didn't you tell me? Lily looked at me with devastating calm. You loved her. That answer contained more truth than any adult explanation could have. I sat down on the stairs. Oliver wiped his face. Are we still having tacos? That ordinary question saved me, because life doesn't pause respectfully when your marriage explodes. Children still need dinner. Homework still exists. Yes, I said, standing again. We're still having tacos. Margaret picked up a knife. I'll chop onions. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the dining room table with a legal pad and reconstructed my marriage like an incident report. Dates, questions she had asked, devices she could access. When she mentioned an old university friend named Graham, when she started pushing for more flexible capital, when she vanished during dinner. Near midnight, Denise called. I have an update. I sat up straighter. Go ahead. The receiving bank froze the destination account before the money moved again. Most of it is still there. How much is most? $17,200. I closed my eyes. And the rest? $800 was withdrawn in cash this morning. Name on the destination account. Graham Hensley. I leaned back in my chair. Of course, Vanessa had mentioned Graham twice in the previous 2 months. An old university friend, back in town, something vague in private acquisitions. I remembered the little laugh when she read one of his texts, the coffee meeting she framed as harmless, the careful casualness. I had not asked questions. Trust often looks noble, while it is making you stupid. Your attorney will want everything documented, Denise said. And that word, attorney, landed cleanly. Because this had stopped being marital confusion. It was theft. When I hung up, I sat in the dark and realized something important. Vanessa had mistaken my calm for softness. A lot of people do that with pilots. They hear a low voice and think compliance. They see composure and think passivity. They confuse discipline with weakness because it doesn't arrive as noise. What they don't understand is this. Calm is not surrender. Sometimes it is precision. The next month became administrative warfare. I hired an attorney named Helen Sloan. Silver hair, perfect posture, voice like polished steel. After hearing the facts, she said, "Did she admit the transfer in front of your sister?" "Yes." "Excellent." Helen moved fast. Emergency separation filing, financial injunctions, civil demand for return of funds, preservation notices, fraud documentation, clear instructions not to answer emotional texts, not to meet privately, not to improvise. Vanessa, predictably, tried new angles. At first, she texted, "You are letting people poison this. This could have been handled privately. You have no idea what Graham was helping me with." I didn't answer. Then her tone changed. "You are overreacting. You are making this permanent. If you keep pushing, the children will be affected." That one made my jaw lock so hard it hurt, because she still thought children were leverage. On the 9th day, she called from an unknown number. I should have ignored it. Instead, I answered from a hotel room during a layover. Archibald. Her voice was soft, almost intimate. "Don't call me from blocked numbers. I needed you to pick up. You have a lawyer. I want to speak like adults." "No. Adults don't steal money and then negotiate tone." Silence. Then, "You're enjoying punishing me." I looked out the hotel window at rain darkening the parking lot. "No, I'm enjoying clarity. You don't know the full story. Tell it to your lawyer. Graham was helping me secure an opportunity. With my reserve account, you never would have understood. Try me." Another pause. "He had access to a private placement. I needed capital quickly. So you stole from me to impress your lover. You make everything sound crude." I'm removing the decorative language. Her breath sharpened. "You were never emotionally present enough to understand what I needed. And yet, you stayed present enough to learn my passwords." That ended the call. Vanessa had wrapped everything in elevated language. Not cheating, evolving. Not theft, reallocation, not greed. Opportunity, not manipulation. Boundaries. But greed remains greed, no matter how beautiful the vocabulary around it becomes. The social fallout arrived sideways. A mutual friend texted, "Hope things settle soon." One of Vanessa's charity contacts stopped returning calls. "Someone told my cousin I had financially controlled my wife and publicly humiliated her over a misunderstanding." Texture, just as Vanessa had promised. I considered defending myself publicly, then I didn't. Truth has one advantage lies never do. It keeps. Still, the gossip reached Claire. She was dropping off the kids one evening when she said, "Lily told me Vanessa is gone." "Yeah." She leaned against her car. "What happened?" I gave her the short version. Fraud. Affair. Graham. Frozen funds. Claire listened without interrupting. Then she said, "She stole from the emergency account?" "Yes." "For another man?" "Apparently an opportunity." Claire laughed once, coldly. "Of course." I rubbed my face. Was I blind? She was quiet for a moment. "No, you were tired. There's a difference." That merely undid me more than the betrayal itself. Claire looked toward the house where our children were arguing over a movie. "Lily never trusted her," she said. "I know. And Oliver? He misses the routine more than he misses her." Claire nodded. Kids grieve structure. Even bad structure. Then she looked back at me. "For the record, I never liked how interested she was in your finances." I stared. "What?" "The second time I met her, she asked more about your retirement planning than your route schedule." Despite everything, I laughed. Claire's face softened. "You'll be okay." "Will I?" "Yes, because now you're angry. Before this, you were only disappointed." That stayed with me. Disappointment is passive. Anger, if used carefully, moves. The hearing happened 6 weeks later. Vanessa arrived in cream. Of course, Graham did not appear. But Helen's investigator had already found enough. Failed ventures, civil complaints, and exactly the kind of financial wreckage you'd expect from a man who called himself an investor, because it sounded better than opportunist. Vanessa's attorney tried to frame the transfer as a misunderstanding between spouses, a temporary reallocation in anticipation of a shared investment decision. Helen didn't even blink. "Then counsel can provide written consent from my client." They could not. The judge, a woman with tired eyes and no patience for polished nonsense, asked Vanessa directly, "Did your husband authorize the transfer?" Vanessa hesitated. Not long. Just long enough to make the answer matter. "No." The room went still. Because sometimes justice is not dramatic. Sometimes It is simply the lie being forced to stand without costume. The judge froze the remaining funds and made it clear that unauthorized transfers of marital assets would not be treated kindly. In the hallway afterward, Vanessa turned to me. Her face was pale, but her voice stayed level. "You've made me look monstrous." I looked at her for a long moment. "No, you just hate daylight." Then I walked away. The real aftermath happened at home. In the way Oliver stopped asking whether Vanessa would come back. In the way Lily started lingering in the kitchen while I cooked, talking more freely than she had in months. In the way the house itself seemed to unclench. I had not understood how much tension Vanessa brought into a room until it was gone. Not loud tension, worse, controlled tension. The kind that makes everyone else quietly rearrange themselves around it. One Saturday morning, Lily was helping me replace a cabinet hinge when she said, "You seem lighter." I looked up. Less braced. That word hit me hard, because she was right. I had been braced for months, maybe longer, for criticism, for subtle contempt disguised as sophistication, for the feeling that no matter what I provided, I was still being evaluated and found emotionally inadequate. Was it that obvious? I asked. "Not obvious," she said. "Just like you were always waiting for something. A storm," I thought. I had been waiting for a storm that was already in the house. A week later, Oliver asked for normal pancakes again. Normal pancakes? He nodded seriously. The ones before fancy pancakes. I laughed before I could stop myself. Vanessa had always plated breakfast beautifully. Fruit cut into shapes. Powdered sugar. Syrup in little pitchers. Everything looked perfect and tasted strangely empty. From that day on, fancy pancakes became our phrase for anything polished and hollow. Little by little, the house returned to itself. Lily's ceramic bowl went back to the center of the table. Oliver's dinosaur magnets returned to the fridge. I stopped apologizing for my work schedule when I wasn't actually doing anything wrong. Claire and I found an easier co-parenting rhythm than we had in years. One evening, while helping Lily study constellations, I realized I had not thought about Vanessa for almost an entire day. That felt more important than the court order. Because recovery is often boring when it is real. It is not one dramatic speech. It is not revenge. It is the gradual return of oxygen. The final separation took months, but the emotional ending happened long before the paperwork did. Vanessa lost her position at the gallery. Officially, it was due to conduct concerns involving undisclosed financial entanglements affecting donor confidence. Unofficially, one of the board members knew exactly who Graham Hensley was. When Margaret told me, I expected to feel vindicated. I didn't. That surprised me. No triumph, no pleasure, no revenge. Just distance. A week later, Vanessa sent an email at 1:03 a.m. I was wrong about some things. That was all it said. No apology, no mention of my children, no acknowledgement of the theft, the lies, the affair, or the damage she carried into my home. Just one sentence, as if partial accuracy were a late gift. I deleted it. Because by then, I understood something I wish I had learned much earlier. Closure does not arrive when the person who hurt you finds better words. It arrives when their explanation stops mattering. Spring came late that year. The maples on our street budded almost overnight. The air shifted from metallic cold to damp earth and cut grass. The kids spent more time outside. Margaret came for dinner twice a month and still referred to Vanessa as the embezzling swan, which made Lily laugh every time. As for me, I flew. Dallas, Seattle, Denver, Toronto. The cockpit felt the same as it always had, but I didn't. I trusted systems more carefully now. Not because people are always dangerous, but because warning signs are real, whether or not you want them to be. You cannot call clear weather from inside a storm just because the clouds are elegantly shaped. One evening, somewhere above a white layer of cloud lit gold by sunset, my first officer asked if I had kids. Yes. How old? 14 and 8. He smiled. Best age and hardest age. I looked out through the windshield. They're the age where they know when adults are lying, I said. Below us, the world was hidden by cloud. Above us, the sky looked endless and calm. And it struck me then that calm is not always peace. Sometimes it is altitude, sometimes it is training. Sometimes it is the earned silence after turbulence, when the aircraft is stable again and you finally admit how badly it was shaking. When I got home the next afternoon, Oliver ran into me so hard he nearly knocked my bag over. Lily followed more slowly, but she hugged me too, which she only did when she forgot to guard herself first. "What's this for?" I asked. She shrugged. "You just look less tired lately." I looked past them, into the house. Our house, honest again, imperfect again. Ours again. "No fancy pancakes tonight," Oliver announced. "Good," I said. "I'm making real ones." Lily rolled her eyes. "That's your whole personality now, isn't it? Truth in breakfast." She laughed despite herself, and standing there with one child hanging off my arm and the other pretending she wasn't relieved while staying close anyway, I finally understood the part that mattered. Vanessa had not nearly ruined my life. She had exposed what did not belong in it. The money came back, mostly. The marriage ended completely. The lies spread, twisted, and eventually burned out in open air. But the real victory was simpler than any courtroom win. My children felt safe again. My home felt breathable again. And I stopped confusing quiet endurance with wisdom. I am Archibald Mercer. I am a pilot. I know what to do when something fails. You do not panic. You do not bargain with false readings. You do not hand control to the person who caused the damage. You assess. You stabilize. You protect the people on board. And then, with steady hands, you bring what remains safely home.